Hi, my name is Liv Janicek, and I'm a member of the programming team here at SeriesFest. I'm so excited to be here with the creators of Spotlight starring Daisy Mulvey from our smartphone series competition.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
My name is Sophia Costanzo, and I'm the creator and director of Spotlight starring Daisy Mulvey.
My name is Molly Renzi, and I play Daisy Mulvey.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Van Houston, and I played the producer, and I also crewed as the first AD.
Hey, everyone. My name is Michael McCurdy, and I played Mr. Smith.
Awesome. Well, we're so excited to have you guys here. Spotlight starring Daisy Mulvey is a very unique and quirky show, and I just wanted to know, how did you come up with the initial idea?
Yeah, so I came up with the initial idea. We're all, except for Molly, the three of us are students at Loyola Marymount University. Molly's also in school right now. And when COVID hit, LMU had new restrictions of how we could even make a film. And so it was sort of a concept that came from, how do we work with what we have? And so the four of us, in addition to our health and safety supervisor, were together. And I really wanted to create a show that reflected the times, but also utilized the space well. So we shot it in my house on my iPhone and really tried to think of, where could this go? So the idea actually started with this thought of, if it's a girl in a ball gown sort of running around, and what do you make of it? And then over time, as I kept developing it, I started thinking more of Laura Mulvey and her essays on the male gaze and what that meant to actually watch content. And then I was thinking of also The Truman Show, and I was very inspired as well by Daisy's. And I think thinking of all those concepts and thinking of where we were in the world, where we're sort of stuck in our homes, stuck in certain places, we're taking in social media in such a different way these days, especially I think during COVID, of how much we're on our phones or limited to what we're seeing in the world, that I thought it would be interesting of, okay, if we take this quirky character and she's stuck in this space and she's made her own world, and we sort of have this commentary on how we view, how we watch, what does that mean then if you have to actually leave that world, or when that world is challenged, what does that mean? So sort of reflecting where we are now in the world as well. So that's where the idea started from. And then it turned into Spotlight starring Daisy Mulvey.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I can definitely see how it relates to quarantine and that feeling of being trapped in our own shows in a way. Yeah, so I love that. And that kind of leads into my next question. How was using a smartphone to film? What did your crew look like? What were the challenges you faced necessarily?
Yeah, part of the reason I even opted for my phone was the aspect of, we're in these tight spaces, and I do think it opens up so much. It definitely got me thinking differently as a director in terms of, where can I place the camera where I couldn't put a larger movie form camera, so I can stick my phone in the sink. I can, stick it in different places. So I think that was a big component of making that choice, as well as that aspect ratio of being 1-to-1, and we're boxed in very literally, as Daisy Mulvey is. So our crew was actually pretty small. So Andrew, like he mentioned, was my first assistant director, and also like all hands on deck in many ways of helping me DP at points or different things. I was directing and DPing. Michael was jumping in where we need him. He's a great utility player for when he wasn't in a scene, being able to hop on. So I'd be curious to hear everyone else's thoughts too. But yeah, that's my perspective of how we kind of organized ourselves.
Yeah, I think kind of going off that, being able to use a smartphone is just like, we all have smartphones. We probably all have them in our pockets right now. So it's something that we have very accessible to us. So it's very easy to just take that phone, and how do you tell a story that way? So one of the cool things with like using a cell phone was like being able to tell it in a way that most stories aren't always told. And one of the cool shots that like Sophie and I worked on was like just taking the phone and like sliding it under a door. You can't do that with an Alexa or a Canon. You're not able to slide it under. So just being able to like find ways to be creative with the cell phone was really cool. Yeah,
you can definitely see that with those downward shots of Daisy, which I loved. I thought they were very, very interesting. Which also adds, I love this show's editing. What were your thought processes behind the various color changes, the filters and the glitches and whatnot?
Yeah, so for that, it was actually pretty funny. Michael and I went to a thrift store to find his costume, and we were walking through and saw this little tiny TV monitor. which I still don't, he tried to get it to work. We could not get it to turn on, couldn't get it to work. And what we ended up doing was taking a picture of it and masking out the middle. And so laying the footage we had behind it. And as I was in class and getting notes, it had originally started in the script as like a CCTV security footage idea of she was being watched. And then it stemmed into this idea of, no, it's actually her show, and the TV being used more so as you as an audience are watching her on TV versus when she's in her own world. So being really careful of when to decide to go back and forth and when to show that she's in her own mind versus in the world, and sort of adding glitches when those lines begin to cross. So really utilizing editing in a way where we could create that language and create that design.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's definitely silently noticeable, but just perfect for the storytelling. One of my favorite shots too is with in the very beginning when Daisy's getting ready and we see the strong female lead sign behind her. It made me chuckle a little bit, but I also just think it's so great for visual storytelling. So what led to that creative decision?
Part of it was, that was a painting I did in undergrad of a sweatshirt I own. But I thought to some extent, and Andrew helped a lot with the PD in that room, and Molly was bringing in all her own costumes and different things and really creating that space. But something that very early on gave us an idea of who she was and where she might go in this journey, and her power as a woman and what it means, especially having a man as a producer come in, and what does that mean even in media these days of women's roles, and sort of taking that stand as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I thought it was great production design and very noticeable from the very beginning. So one more question, or we can do a few more actually too. What do you hope audiences will take away from watching Spotlight starring Daisy Mulvey?
I think I'm gonna say it was just so much fun, and I hope that audiences will take away, especially because it was like a smartphone challenge, like just really like thinking outside of the box and like learning how to like break out of their own shell, because like Daisy was like stuck in like her little box and we are stuck in our boxes. So like, and also like Daisy lives such like a fun and creative life, and I feel like we can like add that in our daily routines too.
I think that's exactly what I took away from it too. I just thought it was so much
Yeah.
fun, and I was amazed that you guys were able to do that all on a smartphone. Definitely inspired me, and I think it'll inspire a lot of other artists to start creating and no longer use equipment as an excuse not to. So I think that's great. Another scene I love is Daisy when she's looking in the mirror. I think the introspective monologue with the sudden ad afterwards is perfectly ironic. And could you tell me more about the writing behind the scene?
Yeah, so for the writing behind the scene, I started to talk to my professor a lot about this idea of monetization, and how nowadays, like even when you're on Instagram or something, you have to get an ad, or it'll remind me when I looked at expensive shoes I actually don't want to buy. And, it's just constantly there and in our face. And so I think that was a piece of it too, of how does that come into play in her world, where this idea she had as an original show where she was really giving back to people all of a sudden isn't her own anymore. And I think it's that moment, and then with the tea sets where she actually swipes it away, that we see her starting to interact with that. So it was cool in the editing too, of having written it, what do you actually visualize it as, and having her actually interact and physically move things off the screen or out of the way too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you kind of talked about this earlier, but I'd love to hear more from everyone too. Who inspires you on the creative front? Do you have any filmmakers or writers you admire specifically?
Well, today's Bob Dylan's 80th birthday. That's someone who carries a lot of spontaneity in their career, and I think that's a big word for this film. Both story structure and as we were putting it together, all hands on deck on set, each scene. It really felt like very conceptually we were approaching it. Even we bring up the TV. That's something we got at the thrift store. We didn't necessarily know its role right away, but as the further we got all in this process, we just kept learning more and more about what we were doing, and what may be the intent of what we were doing. So that was a really fun process to be a part of, compared to sometimes things are really conceptualized, but here that wasn't the case with Daisy Mulvey.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you can definitely see that in the show. And my final fun question is, how was Eddie the dog on set?
He was good. Molly probably interacted with him the most. There were definitely some moments of all of us trying to wrangle him.
Yeah.
He's pretty old.
He was definitely a flirt.
Yeah. Yeah, but he's a star in his own way.
Yeah. It was super fun. Like, I've never like worked with animals like on set before. It's always like a person. But yeah, it was super fun to work with. It was super sweet. Cutest dog.
Eddie's like also really old, and so just seeing Eddie doing the things Eddie did on set was just incredible itself.
He was a star.
He seemed like a star. He was a great addition and perfect for the storyline too. So, well, thank you so much for being here. It was so great talking to you and hearing your thoughts behind such a creative series. We really hope the audiences enjoy watching Spotlight starring Daisy Mulvey.
Great. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.